Hello, welcome to Image Bearers. This is season 3, episode 16. I'm so excited today to have on the program Cresenda Jones. We're going to be sharing learning a little bit more about her, and also she'll be sharing about her new book, which is called Spiritual Transformation. It is set to be released May 21st, which is about 63 days or so. And she does have a cover she would like to show us.
It looks good, Cresenda. I like it.
Thank you.
I really like it.
Illuminations did a great job. I love it too.
They did.
So Spiritual Transformation. It's got a similar look to your first one.
Mm-hmm.
And the subtitle is Emotional Intelligence and Freedom. That's awesome.
Cool.
So Cresenda Jones is a counselor and life coach. She has been a disciple since 1986. Generational trauma and dysfunction led her to intently seek both spiritual maturity and emotional health. Along the journey, her MA in professional counseling, MBA, and massive education have provided clear roadmaps and growth. She considers it a privilege to witness growth and miraculous transformations when she facilitates the timeline therapy, which we're going to learn more about today, that breakthrough process, discussion groups, and work groups. She is most excited when clients eliminate toxic emotions, residue, limiting beliefs that have held them back, freeing them up for life, performance, and success that God has planned. I'm also honored to call Cresenda a good friend. We work together on a number of projects. So again, welcome Cresenda to the program.
Thank you. What an honor.
We also have some of Cresenda's good friends today with us, Bev Ozanne.
Hi there.
And Dr. Tim Sumerlin. So again, thanks so much for joining the program. For those of you that enjoy this episode, please click like and consider subscribing to the channel. It really helps us out. So let's go ahead and get started. Bev, why don't you take it away?
Okay. Well, Cresenda, I'm excited for you to be able to share about the content of this book, but I'd like to get a little background on your journey. Share a little bit about yourself and your journey with emotional intelligence.
All righty. Well, that's a story. And you've heard it before, Bev. So I was considered pretty successful in my career in education, but I did realize that there were some areas that needed attention. And one of my good friends, Eileen Ojeda, she and her husband lead the church in Palm Beach, Florida. She calls it special healing. So Cresenda Jones needed some special healing. And like most of us, we probably grew up with parents who did not know about emotional health or emotional intelligence. And so my parents, and I've had my mom's permission to share this, she's a disciple. Both of my parents were emotionally unavailable. So we really didn't address, articulate, and sometimes didn't allow emotions. So I was the opposite of intelligence. You know, if I was playing golf or you know, at the bowling alley, I would need a serious handicap, you know. So, and then historically, I think culturally, you know, African Americans had to deny and ignore emotions in order to stay alive throughout America's history. So for me personally, without a safe place or a place that was validating, I pretty much internalized my emotions. And, you know, that just leads to trouble. So I had anxiety, I had depression, and I definitely was not emotionally intelligent. So I love a really easy definition of emotional intelligence. It's RUM, being able to recognize, understand, and manage our emotions. And I wouldn't pass the test for the first one forever. And I remember when I first got baptized in Charlotte, North Carolina, all the emotions just started coming out, you know, because I had more of a safe place. And the leader of the church there, Deb, she was like, you know, you cry at the drop of a hat. And I'm like, oh, okay, you know, I'm sorry. So it was really a good experience to be able to even, and I was challenged to look at a list of emotions and consider it every day. And so that was kind of like the start of my journey early on in 1985, 86. But then as I moved into the world of work, things kind of hit the fan when I was a vice principal in New Jersey. It was at a middle school, and the teachers really did not pay attention to the principal at all. They were just like, oh, hey, we're going to do what we need to do. But I could not shake or could not let it go that their behavior impacted me. And so that's really when I understood that, I just wasn't handling things in a healthy way. And I started to seek out professional counseling. So even in the schools, I was really excited to learn about social emotional learning because I wanted to read it for myself. And so that really started also and added to my journey. And I just consumed as much information as possible because I knew that I needed to change. And so going to therapy and then finding Daniel Goleman's emotional intelligence book and Bradbury and Graves' Emotional Intelligence 2.0 book were life-changing for me. I was so very grateful. So after being a disciple for about 18 years, I really needed to understand how I could overcome these deficits for myself personally. And because the resources and the tools that I had just were not sufficient. So just been on a journey to figure out how to be healthy and how to honor God in better ways. And I'm just so grateful. He always seems to provide great tools for me. So that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I'm just going to hold up this book here. This is Cresenda's first book. I don't think you knew I was going to show this, but this is what brought us together, you and I. You gave me a book when I was working at a book table at one of our conferences, and I loved it, going through it for myself. And what made you then decide to write this next book, this one on emotional intelligence?
Great question. So as with that book that you just showed, that's just kind of funny that you showed that. This book on transformation and emotional intelligence and freedom comes from seeing that there's such a great need. I know you guys have been working hard, with emotional health issues in our fellowship and beyond. But especially, many times Christians see that we are more aware sometimes that we need additional tools in addition to our spiritual disciplines. And I love what friend Mike Shapiro said, Dr. Shapiro. He said that we are tasked by God to appeal to the hearts and souls of others in an effort to win them over and share the good news of salvation. And so in that task as Christians, we need emotional intelligence. We need to be healthy because we're not going to be able to appeal to folks or win them over if we're not. So that's the basic premise of all that we do, that we can be close to God and we can help others to be close to God. But after facilitating some groups with David Seaman's workbook, Healing for Damaged Emotions, with groups for men and groups for women, I definitely saw that we needed to have better connections and spiritual maturity, just understanding the connection between spiritual maturity and emotional health. So I frequently recommended Emotional Intelligence 2.0 to folks. I know you love this book too, Bev. It has an assessment in it that only takes about 10 minutes and it gives so much information. And I love doing that workshop also called Mastering Emotional Intelligence. So there, unfortunately, are so many disciples that feel stuck and they're struggling or they're suffering. One friend, she said she just felt tormented. Now, she looked good on the outside, but emotionally, she just felt tormented, and even in her relationships. So I really am a practical person. I was a math major initially and an education major. So for me, I appreciate all the information that we can get, but I want to know, how can I be different? How can I be transformed? How can I be what God wants me to do? I need the practicals, step 1, 2, 3. And so throughout my time as a disciple, I've been looking for that, and God always just continues to add to the toolkit. And so I wanted to share some of that in this book. So that's how I decided to write this one.
Thank you for sharing that, because you know, it's interesting to hear the journey. I bet there are many of us that might have a book. I know you've written one or more, Tim. But as you were sitting there talking, I was thinking about, you know, we have IQ
Oh, yeah.
and we have EQ.
Mhm,
And I've heard that IQ is kind of set.
mhm,
But is EQ?
mhm.
Is EQ set?
The good news is that it's not. So our emotional intelligence, and I gave a little fun definition, being able to recognize, understand, and manage our emotions. But EQ is not set, and it is a skill. So it's not an inherent, ability. They are skills. And I wish I had emotional intelligence 2.0 here, because I would just open it up and share one of the skills that it includes, just to show how practical it is. So anybody can improve their skills with emotional intelligence. It is not set.
So that's exciting and encouraging, because that means that we can change and we can grow
Yes.
with managing our emotions. So that leads me to wonder about why
Mhm.
disciples need to consider emotional intelligence.
Mhm. Mhm.
Could you provide some guidance to help people decide
Mhm.
when they could or need to continue with further mentoring versus professional
Mhm.
therapy?
Okay. Okay. So as I mentioned before, EQ is our ability to manage our emotions and our relationships. And, one of my friends here, she always talks about how God is all about relationships. And so, in order to manage our relationships with God, with ourselves, and with each other, we need emotional intelligence. And Otoma is the image bearer person. And, God has emotions. And so, we are made in his image and we have those emotions. So, once again, about the practicals, emotional intelligence, I wrote down a few things. Just that if you want to understand yourself and others better, you need EQ. If you want better relationships, you need EQ. If you want that job promotion, or a higher salary, you need EQ. One famous quote, and I don't know who it comes from, is that people are hired for their IQ, but they are fired because of their EQ.
Wow.
So, we can be the star engineer and feel that we're smarter than our boss, but our boss might have a little bit more EQ than we do. So we can be hired for our IQ, but usually folks are fired for their EQ. So, and if you want to love, I think about First Corinthians, and if you want to represent the fruits of the Spirit, and Galatians, then you need EQ. And if you need more peace and serenity, or even security, and purity. It's all about emotional intelligence, adding that to our spirituality.
Thank you so much for
Thank
sharing
you.
all that.
Thanks so much.
I'm going to turn it over to Tim. I'm sure you have some questions asked too.
I do. Thank you, Bev. It's good to hear those questions, and so good to be with all of you guys today. And Cresenda, it's great to see your face again. It's been so long.
No.
I feel like we need to catch up again soon. So I'm excited about this book. I got to write in it a little bit, so I'm really excited it's coming out. Cresenda's a dear friend of mine, and we've had some really good talks before. I think we had breakfast together actually last time we talked. It was really fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've got some questions I want to kind of tack on to what Bev asked you and see if you can give me a part 2 on it.
Okay.
So can a person learn to, or like, can they learn to grow with their emotional intelligence, or is it something that's just set within us? We either have it or we don't.
Okay. So, and also, I didn't answer Bev's last question about professional therapy. But so I'll go back to that. But yes, unlike IQ, people can grow in their skills. No matter who we are, no matter where we are, no matter where we start, we can all increase our IQ. So we're not doomed to be where we are today. We can grow. And I love Emotional Intelligence 2.0. It has 66 strategies for increasing those skills. Not only does it have that assessment, so get that book today, because my book is it will provide like a companion for that book. in that for every strategy, I have put together a list of supporting scriptures. So for all
Okay.
66 strategies, in chapter 8, I have scriptures that support that. Now, I'm not a theologian, I'm not a teacher. So, if you see something that just doesn't make sense, give me a call and let me know. But I tried to find scriptures that would support those strategies. So one thing that Bev said, and I think that both you, Tim, and Bev could actually chime in on this because you guys have been in practice for longer than I have, but she had asked, when would you suggest that someone see a therapist as opposed to just relying on what we have in our fellowship, which is wonderful. We get a lot of mentoring and support. But I was thinking with that, when we're not seeing what we desire relationally and in our emotional health, when we don't have the outcomes that we want in those areas, it would be good to see a therapist. When the tools that we've employed aren't leading to our desired outcomes, it'd be good to see a therapist or a coach. If we're feeling impaired in any way or distressed or stuck, it'd be great to see a therapist. And also, a lot of people feel burdened, burnt out or worn out. And, when I think about Jesus saying that his yoke is easy and his burden is light, I think that's really a clear sign that we can utilize support services. We use financial advisors, we use physical trainers. I need a physical trainer. Oh my gosh. We go to the mechanic, we go to the barber, the hairdresser, we have a primary care physician. And so not sure why we have such a weird relationship with the thing that can really meet our needs and help our relationships to be so much more powerful. So I'm grateful that God provides those resources beyond what we have spiritually in our fellowship.
Yeah, it's well said. Wow. I think I'm going to go find me one right soon here. That was really good. So I have a question for you, Cresenda.
Yeah.
In your book, you share quite a few success stories, people that have gone from, not being very happy or adjusted in life to finding great success in this way. What's your favorite one? Like, which one really stands out for you?
Well, see, I don't think that's a fair question.
Because only one, right?
Because every single testimony in the book, every single success story, is just so inspiring. Every single brother and sister that have participated in the Healing for Damaged Emotions discussion groups, they are inspiring to me. Otoma is a 10 talent person. And if I compare him to somebody who is only 2 talented and they have worked so hard to get where they are, both of them are great, but the person that went from a 2 to where they are now, it's taken a whole lot of work. So I am inspired by so many people. But I thought of one person who is already absolutely amazing. And this brother and his wife wrote a testimony, Fernando, Alejandro, and Rosa, they wrote a testimony in the book. And I'm inspired by all of them. But what stood out to me and what I love about Fernando is that he wants to be all he can be for God. Even though he is planning on being a teacher in our fellowship, even though he took on courageously a blended family, and now he and his wife Rosa have their own child together, even though he's a leader in our fellowship in Miami, he still wanted to be all that he could be for God. So despite already being absolutely amazing, he tackled the timeline therapy breakthrough process. And so he has a testimony in the book and also on my website. But basically, the reason why he did was because he wanted to figure out what the root cause of his negative thought patterns was. And so I could relate to that because I always thought that I was not good enough. Always thought that I was not good enough. And, we get these messages and these tapes in our head and we just can't get rid of them. I mean, I've been a disciple since 1986, just trying to set my mind, trying to think about whatever's true, noble, excellent, praiseworthy, those things. And yet subconsciously, all of those memories and all of those emotions were stored and I just could not get rid of them. So Fernando, talked about Proverbs 20 verse 5, and that says that the purposes of a person's hearts are deep waters, but one who has insight draws them out. And he shared in the context of his marriage, just that, that emotional intelligence and even during the timeline therapy process really helped him to understand himself better, the deep waters, and his wife and his family better. So his determination to be more self-aware and to not just settle for where he was, even though he's totally amazing, is just so inspiring to me, because I feel like, many of us are doing well, but we can do better. And so that was really inspiring to me, and I think we'll all benefit from all the work that Fernando has done.
That's very inspiring. And, just to see somebody like that still wants to be more for God and
Yeah.
do his best, that's really cool. And you mentioned timeline therapy a couple times there. So I noticed that's in the back of your book, kind of toward the end of it. Can you describe what that is and maybe how it's different from other kinds of therapies that you yourself have been involved in?
So wow, how do you describe timeline therapy? Now, Bev has seen it. It's how do you describe it? It's just amazing. So most people have heard of cognitive behavior therapy or solution focused therapy or EFT or tapping, EMDR, hypnotherapy. So those are therapeutic interventions or modalities. I personally went through some EMDR treatment because of a traumatic event, and I was very grateful for that when that happened. But I've never seen anything as efficient and effective as timeline therapy. I was just blown away when I saw about it, when I saw it. So when I was working towards my credentials, my supervisor introduced me to timeline therapy, exposed me, and he had a training, and I volunteered, yes, volunteered for a demonstration. And as I mentioned before, I, despite being considered very successful, despite being considered a leader, in the churches that I've been in, a lay leader, despite being quote unquote fruitful and all of that kind of stuff, I always felt like, I'm not good enough. And so I always had those nagging negative tapes in my head. And so I volunteered for a demonstration, always thought that I wasn't good enough. And what was powerful was he actually eliminated that thought, where the limiting belief just did not exist anymore. And I thought it was the dumbest thing ever for me to think that way. So with creative visualization, timeline therapy uses that, and accessing the memories and the emotions connected to those memories, we can actually eliminate negative emotions and limiting beliefs. Things, people struggle with feeling angry, not being able to forgive, feeling hurt, shame, and guilt. Oh my gosh, so many people are just weighed down by shame. And it's so amazing, when I talk to people, like, can you imagine not being weighed down by that anymore? And so what timeline therapy does is it's a therapeutic technique that eliminates that emotional baggage that we all can have. So it's a process that deals with the root issues. And some of you guys have heard of, those who are listening, you may have heard of neuroplasticity. And so that's kind of new in neurology, but it is, to me, one of the most exciting things, because God calls us to renew our minds and, to think like Jesus does. And so with timeline therapy, we can actually rewire those neural connections and change those things that we want to change. So it transforms our internal programming, and it changes the mind, and therefore it changes the behavior and even the personality. One of my friends, Kevin Darby, was like, "You are so different. I don't think I've ever heard you like this." And he said, the edge that you've always had is gone. I'm like, wow, that's good, because I've always had an edge, And so I was so encouraged. I just talked to him about a month ago. I'm like, hey, that's timeline therapy for you. I'm so very grateful. That's a little bit of therapy.
Well, that's awesome. That's, anytime we could find good research and then walk it back into the scriptures, and God's always got foundations for it. So it works because God's so good, right?
Amen.
He wills it to work. So that's exciting to hear that, and the way it's changed you personally. I mean, what a testimony for all of us, Cresenda, is that we're never too far gone that, we shouldn't be able to change, right?
Right.
Somebody once said, if you can't teach an old dog new tricks, then quit being an old dog. you know, and I love that we don't
That's
ever
so
have to
cool.
quit. And I just, you know, thank you so much for answering my questions. I just want to say at the end here, Cresenda, I think a book like this is so needed in our fellowship. You know, the ICOC is in our DNA is relationships. I mean, that's what we're all about, and we serve a relational God. But if we can learn more effectively how to manage those relationships, how to manage ourselves, and then thus manage relationships, how much more happy we are as a fellowship and more effective with our communities around us.
Yes.
So I love these kind of books because it gives people great tools that are pretty simple, actually, to be more effective with other people. So thank you so much for the hours and the hundreds of hours you put into writing. I know these things take a long time. So thank you for your work on this.
Thank
And
you.
I'm going to hand it back over to Bev and let her share something. And I'm just grateful to be with you guys.
Thank you. Oh, can I mention something about old dogs and new tricks?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny because my mom and I got baptized the same year, 1986, and she was in her 40s. You know, I was like, oh, you know, my mom is bad. You know, she's considered old, but she learned some new tricks for God, you know? And so I
Yeah.
always brag on her that at that age, she was willing to submit her life to God, you know? And I think that for me, I always wanted to be, you know, spiritual and righteous, but you know, the reality is that those limiting beliefs and those emotions, you know, they stick with us. They're in our subconscious mind, and unless we get them out there, they're with us, you know. And so I'm all about how can we be better and do it. You know, what are those tools? How can we improve our toolkit? And so that's why I was so excited about that whole timeline therapy thing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I can tell you're really excited about this book, and I am too. You know, I think Cresenda and I've had a chance to facilitate 2 different groups on Zoom last year that I think were very transformative. But working with a book that was written last century, you know, and doesn't have the science that's applied behind it now. And I mean, that Healing for Damaged Emotions book is a treasure. But this just kind of takes it to that next level for people in the Western world who value science so much and evidence-based practices. And so many of us, I mean, seriously, are disconnected emotionally. We don't even know what we're feeling or what to call it. And so this book, I think, is really going to help us learn how to speak to one another and understand emotion and be more compassionate with one another, but also with ourselves. And so I'm looking forward to using this book. And I know Cresenda, I don't know if you were planning on talking about this, but the plan is Cresenda, along with her significant, I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I can call him your betrothed yet, but hopefully that's in the works. And I am going to help facilitate a group this summer utilizing the book. And I'm excited about that because, you know, I grew so much just facilitating using the other book. I'm like, this is really going to be so helpful for me in my practice. You know, it's so funny because some talk therapy, I've noticed a lot of people, they're not working on anything. They just come and they don't have any focus on skill building and, you know, mind change and so forth. And I come from what are we working on here?
Exactly.
You know, we're not just having a cup of coffee here. What do you want to work on? And I think that this is a book that is going to provide a lot of tools, not just for the individual, but for a person, a people helper like me, a licensed professional counselor like Tim, you know, a tool that we can actually use with our clients and give them assignments out of that'll help them kind of go below the surface. So I'm excited about that.
And I think also, you know, church leaders can get frustrated with folks who just are not going beyond that plateau. And I had a plateau years ago. I was like, how can I get beyond it? Those folks who are just stuck in some ways, and you hear the same story over and over and over again. Emotional intelligence really can help with that. So yeah, we're going to do a book discussion group, which will be co-ed actually, where we talk about the book, and that will start Saturday, June the 5th. The book comes out May 21st with Illuminations. Their pre-orders are available, and I have a couple of great bonuses for people. The book has tons of scriptures, and I used to get frustrated reading through a book and having to go and look through the scriptures. So what I've done with one friend's help is just put all the scriptures in a document. And so that's one bonus. And then also we've developed a discussion group, questions for discussion groups. So those are two bonuses that people will get if they pre-order the book. And those 66 strategies with scriptures for each of them, that is going to be, just so very helpful for folks just to have that, as a packet of information. So.
Well, I'm so proud of the work that you have done, and you've really inspired me, Cresenda. I'm grateful that God allowed our paths to cross, and you have influenced my life greatly with your passion for this field, and I'm just grateful.
I am grateful for you guys. Thank you.
I think as we wrap it up, I just wanted to say a few words. I wanted to just be wise and make sure the professionals were asking the questions. So I was just sitting back here. But to me, honestly, you did just a marvelous job just putting this book together. I feel like I'm someone who knows the outlines of a few of these things, but I think you really helped give a lot of definition to them. I think your stories were just very relatable. The way that you write the book, it's like the words are very, very fresh. Not an academic, something that we can't crack it. It's written very well. I really loved it. I also love just the multiple scriptures that you have, how you weave in so many things, especially Proverbs 20 verse 5, Romans 12, and so many others. The other couple of things I really love about your book is how you really tackled, I think in the appendix, how people can have like an aversion to, psychology or therapy, and you just basically eviscerated that in a very nice way. To share that, God has given us these tools, and we can definitely use them in a spiritual way. That spirituality and psychology are not at odds. They can work together. They can shake hands. That's totally cool. And also just some of the authors that you kind of shared about that I was not aware of. I think you closed out with David Entwistle, I believe.
Oh yeah.
And many other authors. So I appreciate you doing, as Dr. Tim said, the hundreds of hours of writing, but also just living for all these years to keep finding more solutions that you then put into a book, for all of us. So I just want to say thank you, just for your life and just for what you put into the book. So
thank you. Amen. Thank you, guys.
So how can we pre-order the book?
Okay, so Illuminations, is it IPI Books? Illumination Publishers.
It's ipibooks.com.
I'm so glad you know that, Tim, since you've written a few books yourself. And Otoma, that really means a lot to me because you read 50 million books, and I'm sure Tim and Bev have read a bunch of books. So, your comments really mean so much to me that you even took the time to read it. So thank you so much. But yeah, IPI Books, pre-order, you get the bonuses. My buddy there, Paul, will send out the bonuses on May 21st for those who pre-order. And please do sign up for the book discussion. See Bev and I again, along with Derek Canton. So that'll be exciting.
Yes.
So what I'll do is I'll put the information in the show notes so people can definitely find out more about the book discussion and how they can pre-order the book with the bonuses and everything.
Great.
So thanks everyone for your time. Definitely have a great rest of the day. And thanks for tuning in today.